The search is restless in this episode of Battle Guides featuring Cesar Grist. Cesar is a juggernaut who makes use of movement abilities to close gaps and hit hard. As his threat level rises, his power and stun guard increase, up to power +3 and stun immunity, allowing him to take hits and deal them back with insane interest. However, his greatest strength is also his greatest weakness. Once his threat level maxes out, he no longer benefits from it and instead gets stunned. As opponents are always aware of your current threat level, they'll take advantage of this stun beat often. That, mixed in with your low speed and low range, make you extremely timing reliant. Cesar's unique ability is threat level. During the anti-phase, Cesar gains 1 threat level counter. And depending on the number of threat level counters he has, he gains different bonuses, which I'll display here. As many of you can see, as his threat level rises and rises, the bonuses get better and better. This, however, isn't true for threat level 4, as Cesar gets stunned instead. Whenever Cesar would gain a 5th threat level counter, his threat level reduces to 0. As an added bonus, the first time Cesar would be defeated by taking damage, he instead sets his life to 1 and gets stunned, effectively allowing him to ignore death 1 time per game. Due to Cesar's unique ability, it is quite clear that he is a momentum-based fighter, getting stronger and stronger as the match goes on. However, unlike other momentum-based fighters like Demetras, Cesar has to gain momentum multiple times over the game because of the nature of his unique ability. What makes people shy away from Cesar is the fact that he basically just gets stunned every 5 beats, giving your opponent a free beat to do whatever he wants. However, what most people don't know is that Cesar can actually use this to his advantage, but we'll go over that later on. The key to playing Cesar effectively is knowing when to time and play your attacks. Certain attacks become easier to play the higher your threat level is. However, certain attacks work the same whether it's low or high threat level, effectively letting Cesar do things even at threat level 0. That, in conjunction with his movement, power, and defense, makes Cesar a threat to anybody he faces. Fueled is Cesar's only style with plus power, letting him deal a lot of damage even at low threat levels. Its start to beat effect allows Cesar to gain 1 threat level counter, effectively gaining 2 that beat if you add the anti-phase 1 with it. Now, this doesn't actually change the effects that Cesar has. If he had power +1 stun guard 1 at the start of the beat, it doesn't matter how many threat levels he has afterwards, as the bonuses are given to him during the anti-step and not at any other point during the beat. This style is basically used to accelerate Cesar's threat level gain, making it faster for him to reach higher threat levels such as threat level 2 and threat level 3. However, another good use for this is to use it when Cesar is at threat level 4, effectively letting him bypass his very weak threat level 0 phase. As an added bonus, it has a before activating effect that allows Cesar to advance 1 or 2 spaces, serving as one of his most reliable means to close the gap. Inevitable might seem odd to have on a juggernaut, but I assure you that it's there for a reason. Not only does it give Cesar stun guard 3, it also gives him an amazing on-hit effect. When Cesar hits his opponent, the opponent is not only stunned, but also loses 3 power during the next beat. At low threat levels, this means that Cesar's low stun guard will still brunt through the enemy's attack, letting him counterattack even only having stun guard 1 or 2. On the other hand, it is amazing at high threat levels, especially threat level 3, as it allows you to mitigate the damage that you will take during your threat level 4 stun beat. Bulwark is the style for sticking to opponents. Not only does it let Cesar ignore movement effects applied to him by the opponent, it also lets him close the gap using its after activating effect. Due to its Stun Guard 3, you can still play this card even at low threat levels, letting you close the gap whenever you want. Whether it's used from melee so that you can keep up with opponents who try to burst, or used afar so that you can get in on those pesky rangers, Bulwark is your go-to style for closing gaps. Phalanx is best played during medium threat levels as it doesn't have a lot of stun guard. Due to the fact that it's Cesar's only style with any natural range, it proves useful when countering moves that are similar to Seth's Fool's style. Aside from that, it lets Cesar close the gap yet again when his opponents hit him, as it lets him advance a number of spaces equal to the damage he takes. As such, I suggest pairing this attack with lots of stun guard, because the more damage you take, the more you can move. But if you get stunned, that's pointless. Unstoppable is most of the time unstoppable because of its two passive effects. The first one states that whenever the opponent finishes performing or activating a movement effect, whether it be something like Drive or something like Grasp, Cesar can advance 1 or 2 spaces, effectively letting him counter things such as bursts, drives, and grasps. On the other hand, the second passive effect states that Cesar is unaffected by opponents' on-hit and on-damage effects. I don't have to say much about this card. However, it doesn't have a lot of natural defense. As such, I suggest playing it during higher threat levels so that Cesar can make the most out of this card. And finally, we end with Cesar's unique base, Suppression. It has range 1, power 2, and priority 2, which might seem bad, but most of the power is in the effects. It has opponents can't move past you, effectively countering dashes. It has attacks at range 3 or greater can't hit you, effectively letting you counter shots and ranged opponents. And its end of beat effect allows Cesar to move up to 3 spaces, letting him reposition for amazing setups during the next few beats. Cesar's 2 overdrive finishers are Level 4 Protocol and Endless Vigil. Level 4 Protocol is a high speed, high power, high defense overdrive finisher that's meant to be played when Cesar reaches level 4, hence the name. On reveal, if Cesar was stunned, he's no longer stunned. Basically, this means that Cesar is able to negate level 4 threat levels stun and still hit. This is an amazing overdrive to use in order to play mind games with your opponent, as threat level 4 is no longer a useless beat for you because you have an attack that can kill your opponent. Use it well, and it is used for mind games. It has threat of power. As such, that means you don't have to play this card in order to benefit from it. Just by having access to this attack, Cesar is now scaring his opponents into thinking that he might play it when he's at threat level 4. Use that to your advantage. And on the plus side, you don't have to play it when you're at threat level 4. You can play it at threat level 3 to deal 10 damage at 11 priority, have stun immunity, and soak 4. That's a mouthful, and that's amazing. However, be wary, because this overdrive has no range whatsoever. So a simple burst will end it. On the other hand, Endless Vigil is one of those overdrives that most people would say is an upgrade overdrive. It has a priority of 8 and soak 4. As an after activating effect, Cesar basically goes back to threat level 0 and for the rest of the game gains double the bonuses from his unique ability. However, it comes with the downside that the next time Cesar reaches threat level 0, he is eliminated from the game. This overdrive is amazing when you're nearing the end of the game and there's not enough beats for Cesar to burn himself out. You escalate much more quickly, and at threat level 3, this basically gives Cesar power plus 6. Power plus 6! That's crazy! With that much power, it's really hard for your opponent to simply shrug off your attacks. So make the most out of it and be wary that your opponent could easily just dash you on your last beat. As a Juggernaut, Cesar can make use of both of his overdrive finishers if the situation calls for it. Level 4 protocol is really great if you want to catch your opponent off guard. On the other hand, Endless Vigil is amazing if you want to be a beast late game. However, he can also make use of Pulse and Cancel. Though I would use Pulse most of the time, as it allows Cesar to stall beats and gain threat levels. And you can also use it on threat level 4 beats to negate that weakness for at least one rotation. And let's move on to the part that everybody loves, Advanced Strategies. Now, Advanced Strategies with Cesar are pretty easy. It's all about mindset. Since you're a momentum-based character, you have to stall beats. And stalling beats usually means playing dash. Even though he is a Juggernaut, most of the time you won't need dash because you have enough stun guard or soak or stun immunity to brunt through your opponent's attacks. As such, Clockwork Shot might not be as scary for you as other characters. As such, you can use your dash to stall beats so that you can get to your higher threat levels without risking the low stats of your lower threat levels. Another thing that you should change in your mindset is the fact that some of Cesar's attacks only work at certain threat levels. As such, it is really important to make it through the first few threat levels before he starts actually being a threat. This goes well with the dashing concept. As such, when you're at lower threat levels, be sure to play safer attacks. But the more threat levels you have, the more leeway you have in playing some of the greatest attacks you have. Another change of mindset most people should make when playing Cesar is the fact that threat level 4 is not as bad as you think. It might stun you, but it still gives you soak. So if your opponent is planning on using a weak, fast attack, it's not that much of a problem. However, your opponent does know when threat level 4 is coming, and usually will plan around that. He will use certain attacks so that on that threat level 4 beat, he has the best attack pair that will deal the most damage to you. Use that to your advantage. What do I mean by that? Cesar has multiple ways in order to abuse that fact. You see, opponents will try to play their best attacks on that beat, and oftentimes will reserve that attack for that beat. And what better way to mess up that perfect plan by playing Fuel or by playing Dash? As such, it's really about messing with your opponent's head. By playing Fueled, you put him off his rhythm so that he can't plan that well for the following beats. When he plays his supposedly good attack, it might still be in discard because you've accelerated your threat level. On the other hand, note that even if you are stunned at threat level 4, you can still make use of certain effects. Getting stunned only doesn't let you activate, but you can still make use of your start of beat and end of beat effects. That means you can still dodge with a burst even if you're stunned at threat level 4. That is one way to put it to your advantage. But the best advice I could give you when it comes to playing Cesar is knowing your attacks. His attacks are devastating, especially with specific threat levels. And that's a perfect segue to our next portion, which is Deadly Combos. First up is Field Dash. Now this might seem counterintuitive to a lot of you, because Field has plus power and minus priority. However, despite that, it still has 8 priority, letting Cesar outspeed most regular attacks. And as a plus side, it lets you accelerate your token gain counter, letting you reach your higher levels of threat, making you a bigger threat and deal more damage the next beat. As such, you usually play this when you're around threat level 0. Next up is Inevitable Shot. Now this might not be the most powerful attack Cesar can play, but it is one of the most effective. Its Stun Guard 5 allows Cesar to brunt through attacks even without any threat level counters on him. And its on-hit effect works well anywhere, as I've said. You can play it early on so that your lower stun guards at lower threat levels will be enough to brunt through your opponent's attack. Or you could play it at threat level 3 so that your opponent won't deal any damage when he hits you on threat level 4. Not only that, but the range on shot compensates for this style's natural lack of range, making it quite the easy attack to hit. And we end with one of my favorite Cesar attacks, Unstoppable Suppression. It might not seem like the strongest attack, but it has added benefits in the fact that it's almost always a guaranteed hit if Cesar plays it when he's in melee range with the opponent. And that's especially true if Cesar's at threat level 3, where he has power plus 3 and stun immunity. No matter what movement effects your opponent might use, Unstoppable's passive effects allow you to close the gap anyway. And that pretty much does it for most of the things that you guys need to know about Cesar Grist. And if you plan on bringing him to the battlefield, here are a few last-minute tips. Number 1. Dash. Dash, 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 dash. As a momentum-based fighter, you need to build up into your later stages, and what better way than to dash? Especially for Cesar, who already has a lot of ways to retaliate and hit back with earnest. As such, use dash to stall beats wherein you don't have your bonuses. Number 2. Threat level 4. Threat level 4 is key to beating Cesar, but it's also key to actually using Cesar. Know which attacks to play during this beat, as a well-played burst can save you from getting hit. But the best thing about it is that you get soak even if you are stunned. As such, it'll still be really hard for your opponents to do anything drastic to Cesar, given his soak too. As such, use that to your advantage. You deal a lot of damage. Your opponents will have a hard time catching up. And finally, remember his unique ability. And I'm not talking about the threat levels. Remember, if you scroll back to the start of this video, you'll see that there's that one tiny clause in Cesar's UA that basically states that he ignores death for one turn. Although this might not seem big, it is actually pretty crucial in a lot of situations, especially when the match is close. Ignoring death for one turn gives you a second chance to hopefully outthink and outsmart your opponent. Never ever forget it, and always consider it in your game plan, especially when you're planning for future beats. And that pretty much does it for this episode of Battle Guides featuring Cesar Grist. Now, if you guys liked this video or it got you interested in playing the game, check the links down there, and you can buy Devastation from level99games.com, or you could join our community at worldofindines.com, and we will teach you how to play and give you more guides. Trust me, our community is great. Now I'm gonna do something that I didn't do in a lot of the previous videos, and that's let you guys pick who goes next. Now, I started out with Cesar because personally, he's one of Brad's favorites. Now, who are your favorites? And I'll post the pictures of everybody here so that you guys can pick. Now, it's all up to you guys. Now, just pick. Click them, and, you know, I'll do the guides next. Now, thank you so much for watching this episode of Battle Guides. And remember, guys, never ever forget the small clause in Cesar's UA. But more importantly, never ever forget your special action. Thank you, and good night, World of Indines. Good night.